Good evening and thank you for joining us. Just 1 week after in-person learning resumed in Ontario, nearly a dozen schools in Thunder Bay have absenteeism rates above 30%. While those numbers may seem high, neither of the major school boards has had to shut down a school or cancel classes. Alex Flood explains.
According to newly released provincial government data, multiple schools across the Lakehead and Catholic school boards are reporting at least 30% of their students and staff were absent on Friday. The information reflects the situation on the most recent school day and shows the combined percentage of students and staff who were away for illness or other reasons. The Lakehead board actually had 4 schools, Algonquin, McKellar, St. James, and Ogden, with more than 40% absenteeism. The board's director of education, Ian McRae, says parents shouldn't be concerned since the rate isn't just linked to COVID-19 related absences.
It's really not that significant in terms of our operation because we do usually have 10 to 20% of students away each day. So it's certainly not a case of when we do reach the threshold of 30% that those are all COVID cases. And secondly, once we do report that, as long as we can maintain our staffing levels, classes and schools continue as usual.
In addition to posting absenteeism rates, the province will now notify families once 30% of students and staff are away from a school. Hybrid learning, where most kids are in class and some are connected virtually at home, has served as a satisfactory measure. But McRae says he's looking forward to the day when every student can return to the classroom.
There's no substitute for in-class learning. We do have more students at home this time around, but we're hoping that'll revert. Certainly with secondary schools semester 2, we're hoping they'll all come back, and it is a better situation that they're in class and with their peers and with their instructors.
The Thunder Bay Catholic District School Board also had several schools above the 30% absenteeism threshold, including St. Anne, St. Vincent, St. Jude, and Our Lady of Charity School. Catholic board officials say all their schools remain open with no classes canceled. They add that administrators are to report any schools exceeding 30% of the health unit, with decisions made after the two sides have a discussion. The NDP responded to the Ford government's new reporting system on Monday, saying it's laughably vague and could leave parents with more questions than answers. They are also calling for the reinstatement of testing, tracing, and case reporting as schools hope to stay open until June. Alex Flood, TBT News.
The Thunder Bay District Health Unit has changed its COVID-19 reporting practices. It's now only reporting cases on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. It's also changed its hospital reporting, now releasing the number of cases in hospitals within its catchment area instead of the number of TBDHU residents in hospital with the virus. This is the number of COVID patients at the Regional Health Sciences Centre hit a pandemic high over the weekend. There are 44 COVID-19 patients being treated at the Thunder Bay Regional Health Sciences Centre. On Sunday, that number was even higher, reaching 50. 10 COVID patients are in intensive care. Hospital occupancy is at 101%, and the ICU occupancy rate has surpassed 95%. The Thunder Bay District Health Unit is reporting 244 new COVID cases over the weekend. There are now 355 active cases, up from 330 on Friday. Last week, the testing positivity rate rose to 23%, up from 17.6% the week before. And there are 47 COVID patients in hospitals that are located within the TBDHU's catchment area. 8 of those patients are in intensive care. The Northwestern Health Unit doesn't report daily cases, but the number of active cases in that part of the region sits at 235, down from 268 on Friday. The 7-day positivity rate there is up to 23.4%. It was 19.5% on Friday. There are 5 COVID-19 hospitalizations at facilities within the NWHU's catchment area, with none in the ICU. Ontario is now the only Canadian province or territory that hasn't signed a $10 a day childcare agreement with Ottawa. This after the Trudeau government announced a deal with Nunavut today. Colin DeMello has more.
Queen's Park is now the sole holdout in a cross-country childcare plan that's been cutting down costs from coast to coast.
The government of Nova Scotia just announced that parent fees will drop by 25% on average, retroactive to January 1st of 2022, and they'll go down another 25% before the end of 2022.
The pressure on the Ford government to strike a deal has been mounting since late last year, and despite weeks of bargaining, the two sides seem to be stalled. The federal government is suggesting the $10.2 billion on the table is firm.
I really believe that there is a good offer on the table. Reaching $10 a day on average by year 5, it will be able to increase spaces in the province of Ontario.
The Ford government, on the other hand, is reiterating that Ontario needs more.
Urging them for a longer-term investment, an increased investment, and more flexibility to support all families and how they raise their children, be it in a nonprofit childcare or an independent childcare. We want all families to receive that benefit.
Childcare advocates say while the deals have been tailored to suit the needs of the provinces, every jurisdiction is getting the same funding per child.
Ontario is getting on a child per capita basis the same as any other jurisdiction. Now, in every jurisdiction, provinces, territorial governments have taken different steps over time to address childcare needs one way or the other.
And dragging it out, advocates argue, puts more pressure on financially stretched families.
That was CTV's Colin DeMello. The Toronto Star is now reporting that Ontario and the federal government are close to striking a deal. The president of the Thunder Bay Police Association released a statement this weekend citing his concerns with the police force's leadership and what he calls a lack of action addressing serious issues raised by his members. Colin Woods penned an opinion piece saying members of the Police Association feel as though they can't voice their concerns without facing consequences, and he says the growing number of members who filed human rights complaints against the service is alarming. The comments echoed those of Police Board member Georgianne Morisseau in her scathing criticism of police leadership and her fellow board members last week. Police Chief Sylvie Hoth issued a public statement of her own this weekend in response, saying it's clear that Woods has aligned himself with Morisseau regarding issues that are now before tribunals. Hoth adds while she respects the right of people in the organization to make complaints, she says it's important to limit public comments while those matters are under review. Police are looking for a suspect after a weekend assault led to a standoff on the city's north side. It happened Sunday morning on Enniskillen Avenue after police were sent to a home for a potential weapons call. Officers blocked off the area and the standoff ensued. The home was the site of an alleged assault that possibly involved a firearm, but investigators don't believe any shots were fired. Police have identified a male suspect and say the victim and the accused were known to one another. 2 other people were arrested at the scene on unrelated warrants. Police say there are no remaining safety threats in the area because of the incident. The conservatory will take center stage at tonight's City Council meeting. The city recently received some financial help from the province to upgrade the facility. Councillors will now determine whether to award a $4.8 million tender to replace the greenhouses and add an annex to the building. The total price tag is expected to ring in at more than $7 million, but the provincial government will cover up to $2 million of that. The conservatory sits in Councillor Shelby Chung's Northwood ward. She believes it's time to finally make some major improvements there.
To understand what we can do and what we should do in the moment and not expect that the cost will ever go down. So if we're in a position where we are receiving funding and we can do this from other orders of government, now is the time to do it. If we do wait, we always have the risk that the costs will go up.
Also tonight, Council will consider making Vickers Park a heritage property. That includes adding a plaque or other signage to recognize the site's historical significance. A water main break is causing some issues on the city's north side. The underground rupture happened on South Water Street between Pearl Street and Park Avenue. That's led to a full street closure with vehicles forced to detour around the area, causing some traffic issues. Drivers are being asked to avoid that section of Water Street if possible and use caution if they have to travel in the area. The street is expected to be closed until late in the evening as crews continue to repair the break. By the start of the next school year, public students in Atikokan will be through with the inconvenience of learning on a construction site. A $30 million project to expand Atikokan High School into a kindergarten to grade 12 facility is on schedule to be finished by September, as Adam Riley tells us.
It's a beautiful building now. Just looking at the site and how it's going to look, you can see what the future will hold.
The wait is nearly over and work has stayed on budget and on time for the fall opening of a revamped kindergarten to grade 12 school in Atikokan. The $31 million project was greenlit by the province in 2018 and work began in 2020. When completed, the school will be home to close to 300 students. Rainy River District School Board Director of Education Heather Campbell says the school is truly coming together and will provide many opportunities for students.
They're going to have two really nice large gyms, and they'll have a beautiful music room that'll be on the stage. So they'll have dual purpose. We have a dual purpose shop class. So there's just lots of flexibility to adapt as we go forward and how education changes.
Campbell notes having several sections of the school being new allows for modern amenities like stronger Wi-Fi coverage and better ventilation to be incorporated into the design instead of being retrofitted after the fact. While things are running smooth from a time and budget standpoint, she says that's not to say there haven't been some challenges, primarily as a result of the pandemic. Some supply chain issues have cropped up, but fortunately the contractor Finway has managed to keep those issues to a minimum on the project, which Campbell saw up close during a tour prior to the holiday break.
All aspects of the site were well underway, whether it's the childcare and the family children hub, whether it's the elementary or the secondary programming. The classrooms were up. They were waiting for some door frames. They were waiting for just some of the materials.
Some older sections of the school will be demolished and replaced with a playground for the elementary school age students, which a board representative says will happen as soon as possible, but no later than the beginning of the 2023-2024 school year. Also, with the implementation of the K-12 model, it effectively creates a new school, and that new school will not be a high school. Campbell says now there is a consideration for a name change.
We have a process, and we'll be embarking upon that this spring, that we look at the renaming or naming of a new school. And certainly when you see a consolidation of a couple of schools or more, you need to go through that process.
Campbell says once all the students have relocated to the new school, the board will declare the existing elementary school, North Star Community School, as surplus and will be disposed of accordingly. Adam Riley, TBT News.
Housing construction in Thunder Bay seems to have experienced a bit of an upswing in 2021 after a decade of declining numbers for new home starts. According to data recently released by Canada Mortgage and Housing, the past year ended strongly with 11 single-family homes started in December. That's 10 more than in December of 2020. The Thunder Bay area used to see about 200 new single-detached homes built every year, but that number's been dropping over the past 10 years to 164 houses in 2015 and an all-time low of just 94 in 2020. But that number rose to 118 this past year. 87 of the builds were on the south side, with 31 in the north. There was also a small increase in multi-unit construction, such as duplexes, row housing, and condos, rising from 50 units to 60. An ice fisherman in Red Rock has come up with a unique way to bring all his gear out onto the lake without having to brave the frigid cold. Donald Stenland has created a vehicle that's half car, half snow machine, and fully equipped for his winter pastime. Mitchell Ringos reports.
The owner of the snow car, which has been named Wolf Track, is Red Rock local Donald Stenland. Stenland did a lot of work on the conventional four-door car by taking the seats, doors, and front brake pads out to drop the overall weight. He then added a set of tracks off a four-door Claris side-by-side in place of the back wheels and had help from a local welder to attach the front skis. The Wolf Track can reach up to 50 kilometers an hour, but usually stays steady at around 20 kilometers across the harsh winter terrain. Stenland says this snow car was built with a purpose and not just to turn heads.
I had the idea from last winter when it was cold out in the lake fishing, and I had this idea of making a car with tracks on it. I had guys in town here that helped me. The The guy did welding there, Pierre Paquette. He's an aluminum welder, and Joe Lance. He's like a machinist, so he helped me make the parts I needed for hooking up the tracks and that.
Also added was a full-size tent, custom fit to the frame in place of the roof, which was removed. As usually, Stenlin would have to get a permit for an ice fishing hut, have to transport that hut out onto the ice, and then would have to remove the hut when leaving. And with such cold weather was a problem that needed a solution. And that solution was the tent that is now part of the car, making the vehicle a mobile ice fishing shack, allowing Stenlin to set up anywhere with ease.
Had to make a tent to fit on it there so that you roll a tarp back that covers up the top there now. There's no roof on it. And then you lift the tent up, it just comes up like a convertible, and then you got a tent where you can stand up inside the car and fish inside there. I got 2 holes in there to fish in. On the nice days, you can go outside and fish. You know, you don't have to stay in the car on the nice days.
And Stellan says for next year, the snow car called the Wolf Tracker will be back again on the ice and bigger and better than ever, with a possible new aluminum dome taking away the original tent. Mitchell Ringos, TBT News.